With Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming out soon and my awesome wife giving me a PS5 for Christmas, it's like the stars had aligned perfectly for me to go and finally play the Final Fantasy VII Remake and try to get my first Platinum trophy. Now, I'm not a hardcore fan of the original by any means, but I definitely spent a good part of my childhood playing through it multiple times with my older brother, so it definitely holds a special place in my heart as far as RPGs go. So I did a little research before I got started, and when I booted up the game for the first time, I knew the first thing I needed to do was to complete all 18 chapters of the campaign, so I could unlock the hard difficulty setting, so I could complete a second playthrough for the Platinum trophy. So I got started and jumped right into chapter 1, that kicks off with us dismounting the train like an absolute boss with our giant buster sword strapped to our back, before rushing into battle and start learning the basics of combat. Then I followed Barrett and the rest of the Avalanche crew into the Mako reactor where I gotta listen to Jesse tell Biggs how fucking good looking I am. Real joy to work with though. Hey girl, what's up? Before learning about the stagger system that allows you to deal extra damage to enemies in the game. Which is cool, but after that I started getting closer to the reactor's core when I learned about the elemental weaknesses that some enemies have in the game when I hit this sweeper with some lightning materia.
Hey, there's a trophy we can resolve.
Which I actually ended up exploiting again during the first boss fight when Cloud got snatched up and I had to set him free. And since I set him free, it wasn't too long before I beat the boss and completed chapter 1.
Ooh, one-time gig, baby. Let's go.
Now, chapter 2 is pretty straightforward. I just had to successfully get to the train station and escape to get the Escape Artist trophy for completing the chapter. But unfortunately, I ended up getting sidetracked after meeting Aerith for the first time and having some PTSD-level flashbacks of the bad man himself.
You are too weak to save anyone. Not even yourself.
But the joke's on him because after beating up a few more enemies, I was able to hop on a train and get away to finish the chapter. Now, chapter 3 is where the game actually opens up a little bit. I get to see my childhood crush for the first time, and then get access to the first side quests in the game. The first side quest I decided to do in Sector 7 was for the boy genius here named Chadley, and yes, his name's Chadley, because he promised me that he would create me some new materia if I could go collect some monster data for him. So I headed out into the scrapyard and killed a few monsters and went back to get my new materia that just happened to come along with a trophy as well. Then the next trophy I got was my first ability trophy because unlike the original, the remake has special abilities tied to each of your weapons that you need to use in combat, a certain number of times to reach 100% proficiency, and for doing so, then you can actually use that skill regardless of what weapon you have equipped for the rest of the game. And you really only have to use them like anywhere between like 5 and 10 different times, so I was able to do this during one of my other side quests in Sector 7. But then later on, after getting all the side quests done, I ended up getting put on ice by Tifa for a little bit, so I decided to play some darts to kill the time.
Haha, heavenly dart player.
And feeling like a fucking champion, I then headed back to my room and finished chapter 3.
Hey, mercenary endeavors.
Now, chapter 4 kicks off into the motorcycle minigame where you have to fight off this goober named Roach. And yes, I know his name isn't actually Roach, but good God, he was an annoying addition to the game, so his name is Roach to me from now on. Anyways, I ended up beating up Roach and moving on with the chapter, but it turns out there is a trophy for beating Roach with 75% or more of your health left, which I didn't get, so I'll have to come back and clean that up later on. But later on in the chapter, while trying to create a diversion for Jesse, I was able to level up my first piece of materia and invoke my first summon.
Hey, my first summon. Let's go, baby.
And then a little later on, I stopped by this vendor on my way back to the 7th Heaven where I bought a music disc, one of the game's collectibles, for another trophy.
Hey, music collector.
Which was nice, but I would eventually have to find all the rest of the remaining 31 music discs in the game for another trophy, but the majority of them you actually find pretty easily while wandering throughout the game, so cleanup on that one won't be so bad later on. But anyways, after all that, I went over and met up with Tifa and Barrett at the train station and completed chapter 4.
Hey, night on the town.
And to be honest, chapter 5 was pretty uneventful as far as trophy goes, so I unlocked the one for completing the chapter.
Hey, plan E, baby.
Before heading right into chapter 6, where I stumbled into this time-locked room where I needed to kill all the enemies in order to open the next door, which I won't lie, it took me 1 or 2 tries to do, but it was worth the extra couple of minutes though, because I got a brand new piece of summon materia and another trophy before completing the chapter. Now, Chapter 7 did something a little different that I thought was interesting that I can't really remember seeing in a game before, or if I have anyways, it's been a hot minute. You see, as you progress through the level, you can actually find these key cards on the ground that you can use to send certain machine parts to the scrapyard instead of the boss at the end of the chapter that make the boss fight easier for yourself, which I thought was pretty cool, but then Barrett had to go ruin it for me.
Reduced response time. Should work in our favor.
For real though, we need to talk victory poses. Something coordinated for the live on camera finish. Could blow up big, start a new trend.
Oh my god. We're ready to fight something and Barrett's over here trying to make fucking TikToks. Okay, I lied. That didn't really ruin it for me because I think Barrett's actually my favorite character of the remake. But anyways, later on we end up bypassing security to open a secure room for some loot, before the team and I headed out onto the bridge where we took out the airbuster that we sabotaged earlier in the chapter and completed Chapter 7. Now, Chapter 8 was a boatload of fun, as it's another chapter filled with some side quests I was able to do for the first time. So first I went and picked some flowers with Aerith for a little while and chatted her up before we went and delivered them to the local orphanage. And then I found our boy Chadley again, who had some new BR battle missions for us to do. And one of them was to fight a summon of all things that it turned out to be Shiva, which again, I thought was actually gonna be harder than it was. But after taking her out, we got her materia and a trophy. Hey, Summon Slayer, let's go. Then I went and helped this lady track down a bunch of orphans from the orphanage so they get back in time for dinner and shit, where I played a whack-a-box game with them, where you have to destroy as many boxes as you can within the time limit for a certain score. And it wasn't hard or anything because I just used Cloud's Punisher stance to rip through literally almost every box that was in there to get the trophy. But with all the side quests out of the way, I then headed towards Wall Market where I met up with Aerith again and finished the chapter. Chapter 9 was by far my least favorite chapter in the game, and that's mostly just because it feels like it's an absolute slog trying to get Corneo's captains to trust you. Like, one of our first stops was the local gym, though, where we ended up meeting Jules, who thought he was hot shit and challenged me to a squat competition. And I don't think Cloud's one to turn down a direct challenge, so I accepted, and...
Those beautiful muscles.
Let's go, baby.
Squat champion. You can do it, Jules. We're rooting
go.
for you. I believe in you.
Yeah.
That it?
But then I had to deal with the most bizarro side quest I did not expect to see in this remake. You see, in the OG version, you have to run around and convince the people of the slums to help you out with a disguise that'll let you get into Corneo's mansion. Well, in the remake, instead, you have to go beat everyone up in the Coliseum to gain the attention of a man named Andre, who's one of the Corneo's captains, who runs the Honeybee Inn in the Wall Market. And in order to get him to give you a disguise for Cloud, you have to do some questionable shit. You see, after you get his attention, you have to go be the main attraction in probably the most homoerotic scene I've ever seen in a video game by competing in this dance-off minigame with Andre himself. And quite honestly, the whole scene just had me asking myself,
is that it? Can we go? I'd like to wash the gay off me. And it's sticky.
But alas, I finished it and then got to lay my eyes on Cloud and his new disguise for the first time. And thankfully, that was the last thing I needed to move on with the story, so me and Aerith headed up to Corneo's mansion and finished the chapter. Now, the next few chapters were kind of a lull and trophy action, right? So I managed to survive and escape the sewers in Chapter 10, and then made my way through the train graveyard, before surviving the pillar incident, and finally heading back to Sector 5 to finish up Chapter 13. Now, Chapter 14 is another freaking slog through the game. It's super side quest heavy, including another encounter with Andre in the gym at the Wall Market where he wanted me to have a pull-up competition with him with Tifa.
Worked up a good sweat.
Before finding Johnny again and helping him get his wallet back from a pit pocket so we could get him out of town. And finding a note laying on the ground from the Angel of the Slums before finishing up Chapter 14. Then in Chapter 15, I managed to scale my way all the way up to the Shinra building. Hey, pizza in the sky. Complete Chapter 15. Let's fucking go. Before finally meeting back up with Aerith again to finish off Chapter 16.
Maybe you should rest a little.
Hey, no appointment needed. Read Chapter 16. Leaving only 2 more chapters to finish for my first playthrough. And chapter 17 and 18 are basically just boss fight after boss fight, minus the first part of 17, where you actually have to spend like a fucking hour just navigating through Hojo's lab that adds absolutely no value to the game whatsoever. Like, it's literally just a fucking time sink. You're running around aimlessly doing nothing. But anyways, regardless of that fact, I was able to beat all the bosses and complete chapter 17 before I got into chapter 18 and got to witness the absolute clusterfuck that Nomura called an ending after beating the Arbiters of Fate and Sephiroth himself, and was forced to face the truth about this remake that I was just hoping wasn't true. Like, I was trying to justify in every way possible in my mind that this was a good game, but I simply couldn't. The Final Fantasy VII Remake isn't a good game, and it's not anything that fans of the original wanted to see, at least in my opinion. Like, don't get me wrong though, it does have its strong points, like seeing a fleshed out Midgar and them staying true to the characters' personalities for the most part was great, and the combat single-handedly carried the game for me throughout my playthrough. But there's so much fucking bloat to try to make Midgar into a 30 or 40 hour campaign by itself, and every time the pacing starts to get good, it grinds to a fucking halt because of some arbitrary side quest you need to do, or a JRPG minigame that should have been retired 20 years ago. And then to top that off, Sephiroth kind of gets shoved down your throat from the beginning of the game. Like, you never get told why he's there, why he matters, what his relationship with Cloud is, or anything like that. It's like they literally only put Sephiroth in the game so they could sell more fucking merchandise. But maybe it's just me though. Like, maybe I'm the one who's just feeling this way because I like the original so much, even though I wasn't necessarily a hardcore fan of it. So let me know down in the comments what you guys thought about the remake. But for me personally, I have a wife, I have kids, I have a full-time job, right? Which means I have very limited time to play games. And while I like achievement hunting and chasing platinums, I don't want to spend that time chasing platinums or achievements on subpar games. And that's why, after looking at the remaining trophies I had left to unlock, I decided that getting the platinum trophy for the Final Fantasy VII Remake just wasn't worth it. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.